It's incredible, and I've never been here before, so just being at the festival for the first time, it's a festival I've always wanted to come to, and getting to come to it with a film is incredible. It's been 13 years since I started working on the film, so this feels like an amazing finish line in a lot of ways, and I'm just so excited for people to see, what we've cooked up.
You are standing inside a secret military prison. It houses what's left of the Nazi high command.
As you say, my day in court.
For me, it felt less daunting because I fell in love with this particular story. I read a book proposal by Jack L. High called The Nazi and the Psychiatrist, and it was only 6 or 7 pages long, and it was the quickest I'd said yes to anything in my life, because there was so much I didn't know. I didn't know that there were psychiatrists in the U.S. Army in World War II. I didn't know that one was called in to evaluate the surviving Nazi high command, and I just sort of initially went, I want to tell that story. I'm so interested in that. So it was less about feeling those pressures and more just an excitement as a storyteller, it's like a dog with a bone. You get, like, I just want to hold on to this. And then it was a lot of research, it was, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and I read about, Dr. Kelly and Hermann Goering, and researched them and read Jack's book as he was writing it. But then I also read about Robert H. Jackson, the Michael Shannon character, who was one of the U.S. Supreme Court justice who basically said we need to hold these trials against what the U.S. Army wanted or any of the armies wanted. They said, we don't want to, putting men on trial for following orders is a terrible precedent to set. But he said, no, this has to happen. And so as I'm sort of building it here, I went, my movie's here, but I think my movie's also over here. Okay. So I did research on that. And then I read about Howie Triest, the translator who was working with Kelly and Gilbert, and his story. Leo Woodall plays him. And I went, oh my gosh, I think my movie's also over here. So it sort of grew and grew and grew. And so I always felt that I wanted to be as accurate as possible and real as possible. And so I know I had set those bars for myself. So from the very beginning, I wanted to make sure that we used primary sources, that we researched everything to within an inch of its life, so that when we got to this point, we could sit here and look at you and go, we've done all.
I know more about this man than anyone else on the planet. You're walking into a trap.
And dear, because people let it happen. Goering on the stand, and I'm going to make him tell the world what he did.
A lot of it was exploring the nature of evil, and I think that's something in my career I keep coming back to. I did a film many years ago with David Fincher called Zodiac, which was sort of a different film, but a similar idea about obsession and what can make people do the things they do, and trying to solve a mystery, and so I keep getting pulled back into that, I think. But the idea of Kelly, who truly looked at this as an opportunity, he felt that this was, having Hermann Goering dropped into his lap was, I get to evaluate, a man who's potentially the greatest living monster on the planet right now. And how are they different than us? How is he different than us? What makes him tick? I think that was exciting for Kelly, and it was exciting for me as a filmmaker to sort of take you down that road. Actors, it's sort of, you want to learn everything and then throw it away, so that they can be present on the day. For us, we wanted to be accurate. So we never wanted to fluff facts and figures or anything like that. We were very, very serious about that. Obviously, this is a story that takes place 80 years ago, so there's enough, you have to imagine some conversations. But the thing about this was the trial was built to be a media trial. It was incredibly well documented. The courtroom had been bombed out. They rebuilt the courtroom to have camera emplacements, microphones, lights, sort of television grade lights hanging from the ceiling so that the cameras could exposed. And it was one of the things we found out, which we put in the movie, is it was so bright and hot in there that they provided sunglasses for the courtgoers, because at every step they made that courtroom into a television studio. So all of that footage and all of those photographs were available to us, which was really amazing. And the other thing we really wanted to do with accuracy is, we show some films in the movie that were taken in the camps. And I said right from the beginning, I'm not going to shoot anything. I'm not going to recreate anything. We're going to use the original footage. We're not going to put music under it. We're not going to juice it in any way. We wanted to play the way it played in the courtroom. And I told the actors, I said, do me a favor, I know that footage is out there, don't look at it. I want you to be fresh on the day. And they agreed, and they came in. And we had 300 people, 300 extras. And I went out and I said a few words, and this is what we're gonna watch today, and this is what we're doing. I want you to be prepared for it. And even though you can't prepare for it. And we had a moment of silence, and then rolled the footage. And it's as powerful today as it was 80 years ago. And it was I have great actors in the movie. I don't want to say that, no acting was required, but I don't know how much acting was required for their reactions to it. And that was a hard day on set. But, that level of, accuracy, was very important. Well, thank you. First of all, just with the actors, I want to say that John Papsadera cast this movie, and he casts Chris Nolan's movies, and for some reason casts my movies, and so I knew I was going to be in a good place. And I also want to talk about Darius Wolski, our cinematographer, who's shot 9 Ridley Scott movies and 2 Tony Scott movies, and. When I met him, I said, didn't you do Pirates of the Caribbean? He said, oh, just the first 4. So he is wonderful with camera, and we talked a lot about, as the movie goes, this is film nerdy stuff, so forgive me, but I love it, with Rami and Russell, in the beginning of the movie, we're off angle a lot with them. We're seeing them more in profile as we go back and forth, and as the movie goes along and they connect more, we get closer and closer to eye lines. So. And it's subtle things like that just, by the end of it, we're right here, and you sort of feel the full power of both of them. So I love stuff like that, and planning stuff like that, so I appreciate it. And then, in terms of relevance, I think, when I wrote the film 13 years ago, it was relevant, and it's unfortunately relevant now, and I think unfortunately it'll be relevant in the future. But as a filmmaker, the goal is to create something timeless, something that sort of lasts, and I just thought that this story was such an important one to tell. Both of my grandfathers fought in World War II, and I had family friends who were lost in the camps, and so for me, this time felt real. It felt like something I could touch, and I talked to my children about it, and understandably, it's like talking to them about the American Revolution. It's just so far away from their purview. So bringing that past back to life, and making it emotional again, and something you could touch and care about, I think was definitely one of our goals. He was amazing. So full disclosure, I didn't call him. I sent him the script, and I had never spoken to him before. I didn't know him. We had his agent at the time was a friend of mine, and so he had read my work, and obviously he was Russell Crowe. I knew his work and what he was capable of, and I sent it through George Freeman, and the word came back that he wants to do it, and I said, okay, does he want to have a conversation with me? Because and he said no. He said he's in. And I said, what? That doesn't happen. And but I was so grateful and thankful for it. And then obviously, eventually we started talking about it, and he embraced it fully. He never wavered. I think there are a lot of actors who would be afraid to play this, and afraid to, not just to learn the German and to do that, but to be, he had no vanity in doing this, and I think that shows in the film in a really wonderful way, and it's such a gift for a director to have an actor to commit to a role like that.